forced name change asked it. I mean, it's right at the point. But do you think a child who has transitioned young would succeed in a lawsuit later in life against their parents? I'm going to go and say yes, against their
Mhm.
parents and against the doctors.
Mhm.
And setting aside legislative immunity, well, that might be the next step. We're going to immunize parents and doctors who do this. I
Yes.
say yes, and obviously so. And I say that's going to happen before it sensitizes parents to caving to the whims. I'm not saying children in the meaning sense. I'm just saying children are idiots by and large. Like, all decisions aside, children are idiots. They don't know what they're doing. They at one point in time, my kid will say, I want to eat candy all day long. They don't know what they're doing. They need responsible adults and responsible doctors. I say, yes, it'll happen. When it starts happening, then parents are going to say, maybe it's not going to be so cool for me to start posting social media posts about me catering to the whims of a 4-year-old kid who can barely speak English, let alone determine the course of their future gender identity.
Yeah,
Robert,
and
what
if
do
they
you
want to
think?
see what kind of liability they could be in, just look at Geico that right now is on the hook for a little more than $5 million because a woman got an STD from a man who failed to disclose that his status because it was inside the car that was insured by Geico at the time.
This makes no sense to me. People have messaged this to me, and I read some articles. I didn't read the proceedings or the judgment. It makes no sense. It will never make sense. The bottom line, an individual engaged in sexual intercourse with a partner in a car that was insured by Geico got an STD. There was some issue about the lawsuit, arbitration, going to courts, whether or not I don't know the nuances. Robert, if you can elucidate how this happened, because ultimately Geico was ordered to pay $5.1 million because it occurred in a vehicle that they were insuring, and this was determined to be an insurable loss. Make
At
it make
least for
sense,
the
Robert.
time being. So what you have is it's very complicated because there's still set a federal court jury trial on whether Geico will be ultimately liable in the fall. So, but leading up to it, what happened is she made a claim against him and said, you failed to disclose it here and sued. They agreed to arbitration. She got a $5.2 million judgment owed by him.
Okay,
His
fine.
claim was Geico refused to defend, refused to do anything. And so the claim then became Geico could be on the hook because whether Geico's insurance was applicable and that they had waived their opportunity to participate by refusing and dishonoring their duty to defend. So that's why Missouri Court of Appeals said, you kind of blew it, Geico. You had a chance. You decided not to. Now, so right now, Geico owes the check because they failed to defend, failed to timely intervene, and that was the amount agreed to. And right now it's insured. But whether or not it's ultimately covered will be determined apparently by this federal trial that's not until fall. The headline was so newsworthy, that's why it went viral. It's actually not a final resolution, and probably Geico will. This probably is not. The question is this: was
Did
that
they
an
have the duty
intended?
to defend?
Yeah. Well. Yeah. One is whether if they may have screwed up by not defending, because that can be different than whether there's coverage. The duty to defend is pretty broad. Now, and so it depends, and they may be on the hook just because of their screw up there. But let's assume if they were to get past that as to the issue of coverage, it's the question is, was this an intended use of the automobile? I mean, it is the back seat, right?
No,
I
but
mean, so
Robert, I just think I just go logically. If someone chokes to death in the car, will the insurers of the car be responsible? If someone,
well,
I,
if a gun maker's responsible for anything that ever happens with a gun, maybe the car insurer is responsible for any use of the car, even the inside use of the car.